Shakti Seer 2.
For choosing to take an interest in the sacred text, the Srimad Bhagavatam, also called the Bhagavata Purana, which has served as the Bible for hundreds of millions of Hindus presently and throughout history, since it was written several thousands of years ago. And according to certain researchers, also for people across the world as far away as the Mediterranean. The Bhagavata Purana was penned by Srila Vyasadeva, the avatar of Vishnu, after he had written all of the previous Vedas. He wrote all of the previous Vedas, and he was not happy and fulfilled in his heart with what he had written and given to mankind, because he had not expressed the most exquisite nectar of devotion to God and the unspeakable reality of that Bhagawan, that personality of Godhead, as Prabhupada calls it. We in the West did not have access to this scripture up until very recently. The scripture was translated by Srila Prabhupada and brought here and propagated in many universities and private collections alike. What we can take from the scripture is precisely that, whatever we can take from it. Whatever level of hearing that you are able to hear with will affect the level that your consciousness is impacted by this sacred oral reception, as it's called, A-U-R-A-L, oral reception, through the spoken word of the sacred scriptures of the Puranas, especially this Purana. In Pure Land Buddhism, as well as in Vaishnavism, the sacred hearing through oral reception, A-U-R-A-L, is part of not only devotion, but part of the fundamental reality of the self. And so, as we begin, hear deeply with your heart, not just with your material intellect. See deeply with your heart, not just with your material eyes. Think deeply with your whole being, from the core of your soul, from the heart to the 1,000-petaled lotus atop your head. Let this gnosis vibrate true within your being. Om Tat Sat. Okay, so Srimad Bhagavatam 1-1-1. O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Krishna, because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no cause beyond him. It is he who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire, or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is externally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is in reality The highest truth is reality, distinguished from illusion, for the welfare of all. The highest truth is reality, distinguished from illusion, for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of the Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Once in the holy forests of Naimisharanya, great sages headed by the sage Shaunaka assembled to perform a great 1,000-year sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees. One day, after finishing their morning duties by burning a sacrificial fire and offering a seat of esteem to Srila Shuta Goswami, the great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters. The great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters. The sages said, "Respected Shuta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in the scriptures famous for religious life, and in the Puranas and histories as well. For you have gone through them under proper guidance and also explained them. Being the eldest learned Vedantist, O Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead. And you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge. And because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from them. Please, therefore, being blessed with many years, explain to us, in an easily understandable way, what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. There are many varieties of scriptures, and in all of them are many prescribed duties, which can be learned only after many years of study in their various divisions. Therefore, O sage, please select the essence of all these scriptures and explain it for the good of all living beings, that by such instructions their hearts may be fully satisfied. All blessings upon you, O Sutta Goswami. You know for what purpose the personality of Godhead appeared in the womb of Devaki as the son of Vasudeva. O Sutta Goswami, we are eager to learn about the personality of Godhead and his incarnations. Please explain to us those teachings imparted by previous masters, acharyas, for one is uplifted both by speaking them and by hearing them. Living beings who are entangled in the complicated mashes of birth and death can be freed immediately, even by unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by feared personified. O Sutta, those great sages who have completely taken shelter in the lotus feet of the Lord can at once sanctify those who come into touch with them, whereas the waters of the Ganga can only sanctify after prolonged use. Who is there desiring deliverance from the vices of the age of quarrel, who is not willing to hear the virtuous glories of the Lord? Who is there desiring deliverance from the vices of the age of quarrel, who is not willing to hear of the virtuous glories of the Lord? His transcendental acts are magnificent and gracious, and great learned sages like Narada sing of them. Please therefore speak to us, who are eager to hear about the adventures he performs in his various incarnations. O wise Sutta, please narrate to us the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Godhead's multi-incarnations. Such auspicious adventures and pastimes of the Lord, the Supreme Controller, are performed by His internal powers. We never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by hymns and prayers. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationships with Him relish hearing of His pastimes at every moment. Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, along with Balaram, played like a human being, and so masked, he performed many superhuman acts. Knowing well the age of Kali has already begun, we are assembled here in this holy place to hear at great length the transcendental message of the Godhead, and in this way perform sacrifice. We think that we have met your goodness by the will of Providence, just so that we might accept you as the captain of the ship for those who desire to cross the difficult ocean of Kali, which deteriorates all of the good qualities of a human being. Since Sri Krishna, the absolute truth, the master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode, please tell us to whom the religious principles have now gone for shelter. So I'm going to begin reciting chapter 1.2.1 from the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 1-2, Divinity and Divine Service. Ugrashrava Shuta Goswami, the son of Romaharshana, being fully satisfied with the perfect questions of the Brahmanas, thanked them and thus attempted to reply. Srila Shuta Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that great sage, Shukadeva Goswami, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyas, leaving home without undergoing reformation by the sacred thread or ceremonies observed by the higher castes, his father, Vyasadeva, fearing separation from him, cried out, 'Oh, my son, indeed, only the trees which were absorbed in the same feeling of separation,' echoed in response of the bereaved father when he cried out, 'Oh, my son.' Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Shuka, the spiritual master of all sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge, after having personally assimilated it by experience. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto his mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. O sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and so are of the relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant to inquire about the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. learned transcendentalists who know this the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatman, or Bhagwan. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from Vedanta Shruti. O best among twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging duties. It is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste division and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead. Therefore, with one-pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. With sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma, by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the message of Vasudeva. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, supersoul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service under the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effect of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desiring, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness, and he becomes completely happy. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has become enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Thus the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as master. Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with great delight, because such devotional service is enlivening to the self. The transcendental personality of Godhead is indirectly associated with the three modes of material nature, namely passion, goodness, and ignorance, and just for the material world's creation, maintenance, and destruction, he accepts the three qualitative forms of Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. Of these three, all human beings can derive ultimate benefit from Vishnu, the form of the quality of goodness, or sometimes Sattva-gun is translated as lucidity. Firewood is a transformation of earth, but smoke is better than raw wood, and fire is still better. For by fire we can derive the benefits of superior knowledge through Vedic sacrifices. Similarly, passion, rajas, is better than ignorance, tamas, but goodness, or lucidity, sattva, is best because only goodness or lucidity can come to realize the absolute truth. Previously, all great sages rendered service under the personality of Godhead due to his existence above the three modes of material nature. They worshipped him to become free from material conditions and thus derive the ultimate benefit. Whoever follows such great authorities is also eligible for liberation from the material world. Those who are serious about liberation are certainly non-envious, and they respect all. Yet they reject the horrible and ghastly forms of the demigods and worship only the all-blissful forms of Lord Vishnu and his plenary portions. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities, for they are urged by a desire to be materially benefited with woman, wealth, power, and progeny. In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please Him. Yoga is for realizing Him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by Him only. He is supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know Him. Religion, dharma, is rendering loving service unto Him. He is the supreme goal of life. In the beginning of the material creation, the absolute personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, in His transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by His own internal energy. And after creating the material substance, the Lord Vasudeva expands Himself and enters into it. And although He is within the material modes of nature and appears to be one of the created beings, He is always fully enlightened in His transcendental position. The Lord as Supersoul pervades all things, just as fire permeates wood. And so He appears to be of many varieties, though He is the absolute one, without a second. The Supersoul enters into the bodies of the created beings who are influenced by the modes of material nature and causes them to enjoy the effects of those modes by the subtle mind. Thus the Lord of universes maintains all planets inhabited by demigods, men, and lower animals. Assuming the roles of incarnations, He performs pastimes to reclaim those in the mode of pure goodness. Om Tat Sat. Bhagavat Purana 1-3-1. Shuta said, in the beginning of the creation, the Lord first expanded Himself in the universal form of the Purush incarnation and manifested all the ingredients for the material creation. And thus at first there was the creation of the 16 principles of material action. This was for the purpose of creating the material universe. A part of that Purusha lies down within the waters of the universe. From the navel lake of his body, the navel lake of his body sprouts a lotus stem, and from the lotus flower atop this stem, Brahma, the master of all engineers in the universe, becomes manifested. So that's Narayan. Narayan, a part of the Purusha, lies down within the water of the universe, and from the navel lake of his body sprouts a lotus stem, and from that lotus flower atop this stem, Brahma, the master of all engineers in the universe, becomes manifest. It is believed that all the universal planetary systems are situated on the extensive body of the Purusha. But he has nothing to do with the created material ingredients. His body is eternally spiritual in existence par excellence. The devotees with their perfect eyes see the transcendental form of the Purusha, who has thousands of legs, thighs, arms, and faces, all extraordinary. In that body there are thousands of heads, ears, eyes, and noses. They are decorated with thousands of helmets and glowing earrings and are adorned with garlands. This form, the second manifestation of the Purusha, is the source and indestructible seed of multifarious incarnations within the universe. From the particles and portions of this form, different entities, like demigods, men, and others, are created. First of all, in the beginning of the creation, there were the 4 unmarried sons of Brahma, the Kumaras, who, being situated in a vow of celibacy, underwent severe austerities for the realization of the absolute truth. The supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices accepted the incarnation of a boar, the second incarnation, and for the welfare of the earth he lifted the earth from the nether regions of the universe. In the millennium of the Rishis, the personality of Godhead accepted the third empowered incarnation in the form of Devarshi Narada, who is a great sage among the demigods. He collected expositions of the Vedas which deal with devotional service and which inspire non-fruitive action. In the fourth incarnation, the Lord became Nara and Narayan, the twin sons of the wife of King Dharma. Thus he undertook severe and exemplary penances to control the senses. The fifth incarnation, named Lord Kapila, is the foremost among perfected beings. He gave an exposition of the creative elements and metaphysics to Asuri Brahmana, for in the course of time this knowledge had been lost. The sixth incarnation of the Purusha was the son of the sage Atri. He was born from the womb of Anashuya, who prayed for an incarnation. He spoke on the subject of transcendence to Alarka, Prahlad, and others, Yadu, Hyaya, etc. The second incarnation was Yajna, the son of Prajapati Ruchi and his wife Akuti. He controlled the period during the change of the Svayambhu Manu and was assisted by demigods such as his son Yama. The eighth incarnation was King Rishabha, son of King Nabhi and his wife Meru Devi. In this incarnation, the Lord showed the path of perfection, which is followed by those who fully control their senses and who are honored by all orders of life. O Brahmanas, in the ninth incarnation, the Lord, prayed for by the sages, accepted the body of a king, King Prithu, who cultivated the land to yield vast produces, and for that reason the earth was beautiful and attractive. When there was a complete inundation after the period of Chakshushamanu, and the whole world was deep within water, the Lord accepted the form of a fish and protected Vaivashvata Manu, keeping him on a boat. So there you have the story of Noah. The 11th incarnation of the Lord took the form of a tortoise whose shell served as a pivot from Mandarachala hill, which was being used as a churning rod by the Suras and the Asuras, that is, the theists and the atheists of the universe. In the 12th incarnation, the Lord appeared as Dhavanatari, and in the 13th he allured the atheists by the charming beauty of a woman and gave nectar to the demigods to drink, that is, Madan Mohini Devi. In the 14th incarnation, the Lord appeared as Nrsimha and bifurcated the strong body of the atheist Hiranyakashipu with his nails, just as a carpenter pierces cane. In the 15th incarnation, the Lord assumed the form of a dwarf Brahmana, Vamana, and visited in the arena of sacrifice arranged by Maharaj Bali. Although at heart he was willing to regain the kingdom of the 3 planetary systems, he simply asked for a donation of 3 steps of land. In the 16th incarnation of Godhead, the Lord as Bhrigupati annihilated the administrative class, the Kshatriyas, 21 times, being angry with them because of their rebellion against the Brahmanas. Thereafter, in the 17th incarnation of Godhead, Sri Vyasadeva appeared in the womb of Satyavati through Parashara Muni and divided the Veda into several branches and sub-branches, seeing that the people in general were less intelligent. In the 18th incarnation, the Lord appeared as King Rama. In order to perform some pleasing work for the demigods, he exhibited superhuman powers by controlling the Indian Ocean and then killing the atheist King Ravana, who was on the other side of the sea. In the 19th and 20th incarnations, the Lord advented himself as Lord Balarama. Did I read that right? Yeah, the Lord advented himself as Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna in the family of Vrishni, the Yadu dynasty, and by doing so he removed the burden of this world. Then in the beginning of Kali Yuga, the Lord will appear as Lord Buddha, son of Anjana, in the province of Gaya, for the purpose of infatuating those who are envious of the faithful demigods. And there's a whole other page which I'm reading here which talks about how that there was an actual theistic Buddha, and then there's two Buddhas actually that we know of historically, and one of them was the true avatar and another one was deluding people. So anyway, if you want to look that up, you can. Continuing. Therefore, after the conjunction of the two yugas, the Lord of creation will take his birth at the as the Kalki incarnation, become the son of the Vishnu Yasha. At this time, the rulers of the earth will have degenerated into plunderers. O Brahmanas, the incarnations of the Lord are innumerable, like rivulets flowing from inexhaustible sources of water. All the rishis, manus, demigods, and descendants of Manu, who are especially powerful, are plenary portions of the Lord. This also includes the Prajapatis. All of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheists. The Lord incarnates to protect the theists. Whoever carefully recites the mysterious appearance of the Lord with devotion in the morning and evening gets relief from all miseries of life. The concept of the Virat, universal form of the Lord, as appearing in the material world is imaginary. It is to enable the less intelligent and neophytes to adjust to the idea of the Lord's having form. But factually, the Lord has no material form. Clouds and dust are carried by air, but less intelligent persons say that the sky is cloudy or that the air is dirty. Similarly, they also implant the material body conceptions on the spirit self. Beyond this gross conception of form is another subtle conception of form which is without formal shape and is unseen, unheard, and manifest. The living being has his form beyond this subtlety. Otherwise, he could not have repeated births. When a person experiences, by self-realization, that both the gross and subtle bodies have nothing to do with the pure self, at that time he sees himself as well as the Lord. If the illusory energy subsides and the living entity becomes fully enriched with knowledge by grace of the Lord, then at once he becomes enlightened with self-realization, and he becomes situated in his own glory. Thus learned men describe the births and activities of the unborn and inactive, which is undiscoverable even in the Vedic literatures. He is the Lord of the heart. The Lord, whose activities are always spotless, is the master of the six senses and is fully omnipotent with six opulences. He creates the manifested universes, maintains them, and annihilates them without in the least bit being affected. He is within every living being and is always independent. Those foolish with the poor fund of knowledge cannot know the transcendental nature of the forms, names, and activities of the Lord, who is playing like an actor in the drama. Nor can they express such things, neither in their speculations nor in their words. Only those who render unreserved, uninterrupted, favorable service unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who carries the wheel of the chariot in his hand, can know the creator of the universe in his full glory, power, and transcendence. Only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful and perfectly cognizant, for such inquiries invoke transcendental ecstatic love unto the personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of all the universes, and guarantee cent% immunity from the dreadful repetition of birth and death. This Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God, and it is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Vyasadeva delivered it to his son, who is the most respected among the self-realized, after extracting the cream of all the Vedic literatures and histories of the universe. Shukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, in his turn delivered the Bhagavatam to the Emperor Parikshit, who sat surrounded by sages on the bank of the Ganga, awaiting death without taking food or drink. This Bhagavata Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their visions due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. O learned Brahmanas, When Shukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam there in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus by his mercy I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing that I have learned, as I learned it from him, and I have realized it. Okay, chapter 1-4, the Bhagavata Purana. This chapter is titled The Appearance of Sri Narada. On hearing Sutta Goswami speak thus, Shanaka Muni, who was the elderly, learned leader of all the rishis, engaged that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Sutta Goswami by addressing him as follows. Shanaka said, "O Sutta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected. For all those who can speak and recite, please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Shukadeva Goswami. In what period and at what place was this first begun, and why was this taken up? From where did Krishna Dvaipara Vyas, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature? His, Vyasadeva's son, was a great devotee, an equibalanced monist, whose mind was always concentrated on monism. In monism, he was transcendent to mundane activities, but being unexposed, he appeared like an ignorant person. Unexposed meaning he's naked. While Srila Vyasadeva was following his son, beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked covered their bodies with cloth, although Vyasadeva himself was not naked. But they had done so when his son, but they had not done so when his son had passed. The sage inquired about this, and the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them made no distinction between male and female, but the sage made such distinctions. How was he, Srila Shukadev, the son of Vyas, recognized by the citizens when he entered into the city of Hastinapur, after wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jangal, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded? He, Sukadev, how was it so that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this transcendental essence of the Vedas, the Bhagavatam, to be sung by him? He, Shukadev Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked, and he did this just to sanctify the residence. It is said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first-class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities were wonderful. Please tell us about him. He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges and fast until death? He was such a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed insuperable kingly opulences. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life? Those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead live only for their welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So even though the Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachment to worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body, which was a shelter for others? We know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects, except some proportions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all questions we have just put to you. Shuta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parashara in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vashu. Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablution in the waters of the Sarasvati and sat alone to concentrate. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. The great sage, who was fully equipped in knowledge, could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material, due to the influence of this age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus he contemplated for the welfare of men in all statuses and orders of life. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupation could be purified, and to simplify the process he divided the one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men. The 4 divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately, but the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the 5th Veda. After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of the Rig Veda, Jaimini became the professor of the Shama Veda, and Vaishampayana alone became glorified by the Yajur Veda. The Shumanta Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharva Veda. And my father, Ramaharshan, was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records. All these learned scholars, in their turn, rendered their entrusted Vedas unto their many disciples, grand disciples, and great-grand disciples. And thus respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being. Thus the great sage Vyasadeva, who was very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so they might be assimilated by less intellectual men. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this world enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, and friends of the twice-born. O twice-born Brahmanas! Still his mind was not satisfied. Although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself, I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual master, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of my disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Shudras, and others, friends of the twice-born, can see the path of religion. I am feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. As mentioned before, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna Dvaipana Vyas on the banks of the Saraswati just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. On this auspicious arrival of Sri Narada, Sri Vyasadeva got up and respectfully worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that of Brahmaji, the creator. Okay, beginning with Srimad Bhagavatam 1-5-1. Sutta Goswami said, Thus the sage among the gods, Narada, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the rishi among the brahmanas. Vedavyasa. Addressing Vedavyas, the son of Parashara, Narada inquired, Are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization? Your inquiries were full, and your studies were also fulfilled, and there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences elaborately explained. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman, as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? Sri Vyasadeva said, All you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction, for you are a man of unlimited knowledge due to your being the offspring of one, Brahma, who is self-born, without mundane mother-father. My lord, everything that is mysterious is known to you, because you worship the creator and destroyer of the material world and the maintainer of the spiritual world, the original personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. Like the sun, your goodness can travel anywhere in the three worlds, and like the air, you can penetrate the internal region of everyone. You are as good as the all-pervasive super-soul. Therefore, find out the deficiency in me, despite my being absorbed in transcendence under disciplinary regulations and vows. Sri Narada said, you have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. Although a great sage, you have very broadly described the four principles concerned, beginning with religious performances. You have not described the glories of the Supreme Personality, Vasudeva. Those words, which do not describe the glories of the Lord, which alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. On the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of name, form, pastimes, etc. of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed towards bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by men who are thoroughly honest. Knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look through well if devoid of a conception of the infallible God. What then is the use of fruitive activities, which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transient by nature, if they are not utilized for the devotional service of the Lord? O Vyasadeva, your vision is completely perfect, your good fame is spotless. You are firm in vow and situated in truthfulness, and thus you can think of the pastimes of the Lord in a trance, for the liberation of people in general from all material bondage. Whatever you desire to describe that is separate in vision from the Lord simply reacts, with different names and forms and results, to agitate the mind as the wind agitates a boat that has no resting place. The people in general are naturally inclined to enjoy, and you have encouraged them in that way in the name of religion. This is verily condemned and is quite reasonable. Unreasonable, rather. This is verily condemned and is quite unreasonable. Because they are guided under your instruction, they will adopt activities in the name of religion and will hardly care for prohibitions. Adopt such activities. The Supreme Lord is unlimited. Only a very expert personality retired from the activities of material happiness deserves to understand this knowledge of spiritual values. Therefore, those who are not so well situated due to material attachment should be shown the ways of transcendental realization by your goodness through descriptions of the transcendental activities of the Lord. One who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage, yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational activities, does not gain anything. Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end, which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet Brahmloka down to the lowest Patala, As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time, just as in course of time we obtain miseries, though we do not desire them. My dear Vyasadeva, even though a devotee of Lord Krishna sometimes falls down somehow or other, he certainly does not undergo material existence like others, because a person who has relished the taste of the lotus feet of the Lord can do nothing but remember that ecstasy again and again. The Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, is himself this cosmos, and he is still, still he is aloof from it. From him only has this cosmic manifestation emanated. In him it rests, and unto him it enters after annihilation. Your good self knows about all this. I have only given a synopsis. Your goodness has perfect vision. You yourself can know the Supreme Personality of Godhead because you are present as the plenary portion of the Lord. Although you are birthless, you have appeared on this earth for the well-being of all people. Please, therefore, describe the transcendental pastimes of the Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, more vividly. Learned circles have positively concluded that the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, namely austerity, study of the Vedas, chanting of hymns, and charity, culminates in the transcendental descriptions of the Lord, who is defined in choice poetry. O Muni, in the last millennium I was born of the son of a certain maidservant engaged in the service of the Brahmanas, who were following the principles of Vedanta. When they were living together during the 4 months of the rainy season, I was engaged in their personal service. Although they were impartial by nature, those followers of Vedanta blessed me with their causeless mercy. As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled and had no attachment for sports, even though I was a boy. In addition, I was not naughty, and I did not speak more than was required. And once only by their permission, I took the remnants of their food, and by so doing all my sins were at once eradicated. Thus being engaged, I became purified in heart, and at that time the very nature of the transcendentalist became very attractive to me. Vyasadeva, in that association of and by the mercy of those great Vedantists, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna, and thus listening attentively, my taste for hearing of the personality of Godhead increased every day, every step. O great sage, as soon as I got a taste for the personality of Godhead, my attention to hear of the Lord was unflinching. And as my taste developed, I could realize that it was only in my ignorance that I had accepted gross and subtle coverings, for both the Lord and I are transcendental. Thus, during 2 seasons, the rainy season and autumn, I had the opportunity to hear those great-souled sages constantly chant the unadulterated glories of Lord Hari. As the flow of my devotional service began, the coverings of the mode of passion and ignorance vanished. I was very much attached to those sages. I was gentle in behavior, and all of my sins were eradicated in their service. In my heart, I had strong faith in them. I had subjugated the senses, and I was strictly following them with my body and mind. As they were leaving, those Bhaktivedantas, who are very kind to poor-hearted souls, instructed me in that most confidential subject which is instructed by the Personality of Godhead himself. By that confidential knowledge, I could understand clearly the influence of the energy of Lord Sri Krishna, the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. By knowing that, one can return to him and personally meet him. O Brahmana Vyasadeva, it is decided by the learned and the best remedial measure, that the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by the very same thing? Thus, when all man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which caused his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. Whatever work is done in this life is for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service to the Lord. And what is called knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. Concomitant means accompanying or associated with. I had to look that up. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him, his name, and qualities. Let us all chant the glories of Vasudeva along with his plenary expansions, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Shankarshana. Thus he is the actual seer who worships in the form of transcendental sound representation the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, who has no material form. O Brahmanas, thus by the Supreme Lord Krishna, I was endowed first with the transcendental knowledge of the Lord as inculcated in the confidential part of the Vedas, then with the spiritual opulences, then with his intimate loving surface. Please, therefore, describe the Almighty Lord's activities which you have learned by your past knowledge. Please, therefore, describe the Almighty Lord's activities which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for it will satisfy the hankerings of the great men and at the same time mitigate the miseries and the masses of common people who are always suffering by material pangs. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. Bhagavata Purana 1-6. Sutta said, O Brahmanas, thus hearing all about Sri Narada's birth and activities, Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God and son of Satyavati, inquired as follows. Sri Vyasadeva said, what did you, Narada, do after the departure of the great sages, who had instructed you in scientific knowledge before the beginning of your present birth? O son of Brahma, how did you pass your life after initiation? How did you attain this body, having quit your old one in due course? O great sage, time annihilates everything in due course. So how is it that this subject matter, which happened prior to this day of Brahma, is still fresh in your memory, undisturbed by time? Sri Narada said, the great sages who had imparted scientific knowledge of transcendence to me departed for other places, and I had to pass my life in this way. I was the only son of my mother, who was not a simple woman, who was not only a simple woman, but was a maidservant as well. Since I was her only offspring, she had no other alternative for protection. She bound me with the tie of affection. She wanted to look after my maintenance properly, but because she was not independent, she was not able to do anything for me. The world is under full control of the Supreme Lord, therefore everyone is like a wooden doll in the hands of a puppet master. When I was a mere child of 5 years, I lived in a Brahmana school. I was dependent on my mother's affection and had no experience of different lands. Once upon a time, my poor mother, when going out one night to milk a cow, was bitten on the leg by a serpent, influenced by supreme time. I took this as the special mercy of the Lord, who always desires benedictions for his devotees, and so thinking, I started for the north. After my departure, I passed many flourishing metropolises, towns, villages, animal farms, mines, agricultural lands, valleys, flower gardens, nursery gardens, and natural forests. I passed through hills and mountains full of reservoirs of various minerals like gold, silver, and copper, and through tracts of lands with various reservoirs of water filled with beautiful lotus flowers fit for the denizens of heaven, and decorated with bewildered bees and singing birds. I passed alone through many forests of rushes, bamboos, reeds, sharp grass, weeds, and caves, which were very difficult to go through alone. I visited deep, dark, and dangerously fearful forests, which were a play yard of snakes, owls, and jackals. Thus traveling, I felt tired both bodily and mentally, and I was both thirsty and hungry, so I took a bath in a river lake and also drank water. By contacting water, I got relief from my exhaustion. After that, under the shadow of a banyan tree in an uninhabited forest, I began to meditate upon the supersoul situated within, using my intelligence, as I had learned from liberated souls. As soon as I began to meditate upon the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead with my mind transformed in transcendental love, tears rolled down my eyes, and without delay the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna appeared on the lotus of my heart. O Vyasadeva, at that time, being exceedingly overpowered by feelings of happiness, every part of me became separately enlivened. Being absorbed in an ocean of ecstasy, I could not see both myself and the Lord. The transcendental form of the Lord, as it is, satisfies the mind's desire and at once erases all mental incongruities. Upon losing that form, I suddenly got up, being perturbed, as is usual when one loses that which is desirable. I desired to see that transcendental form of the Lord, but despite my attempts to concentrate upon the heart with eagerness to view the form again, I could not see him anymore, and thus dissatisfied I was very much aggrieved. Seeing my attempts in that lonely place, the personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to all other mundane description, spoke to me with gravity and pleasing words, just to mitigate my grief. "O Narada," the Lord spake, "I regret that during this lifetime you will not be able to see me anymore. Those who are incomplete in service, and who are not completely free from all material taints, can hardly see me. O virtuous one, you have only seen my person, and this is just to increase your desire for me, because the more you hanker for me, the more you'll be freed from all material desires. By the service of the absolute truth, even for a few days, a devotee attains firm and fixed intelligence in me. Consequently, he goes on to become my associate in the transcendental world after giving up the present deplorable material worlds. Intelligence engaged in my devotion cannot be thwarted at any time. Even at the time of creation, as well as at the time of annihilation, your remembrance will continue by my mercy. Then that supreme authority, personified by sound and unseen by eyes, but most wonderful, stopped speaking. Feeling a sense of gratitude, I offered my obeisances to him, bowing my head. Thus I began chanting the holy name and fame of the Lord by repeated recitation, ignoring all the formalities of the material world. Such chanting and remembrance of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are benedictory. So doing, I traveled all over the earth, fully satisfied, humble, and unenvious. And so, Brahmana Vyasadeva, in due course of time, I, who was fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna, and who therefore had no attachments, being completely freed from all material taints, met with death, as lightning and illumination occur simultaneously. Having been awarded a transcendental body befitting an associate of the personality of Godhead, I quit the body made of 5 elements, and thus acquired the fruit of results of work karma stops. At the end of the millennium, when the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana, laid down within the waters of devastation, Brahma began to enter into him, along with all creative elements, and I entered through his breathing. After 4,300,000,000 solar years, when Brahma awoke to create again by the will of the Lord, all of the rishis like Marich, Angra, and Atri, and so on, were created from the transcendental body of the Lord, and I also appeared with them. Since then, by the grace of the Almighty Vishnu, I travel everywhere without restriction, both in the transcendental world and in the 3 divisions of the material world. This is because I am fixed in unbroken devotional service to the Lord. And thus I travel constantly singing the transcendental message of the glories of the Lord, vibrating this instrument called a veena, which is charged with transcendental sound and which is given to me by Lord Krishna. The Supreme Lord Krishna, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear, at once appears in the seat of my heart, as if called for, as soon as I begin to chant his holy activities. It is personally experienced by me that those who are always full of cares and anxieties due to desiring contact of the senses with their objects can cross the ocean of nescience on a most suitable boat. The constant chanting of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead O Vyasadeva, you are free from all sins. Thus I have explained my birth and activities for self-realization, as you asked. All this will be conducive for you, for your personal satisfaction as well. Shuta Goswami said, thus addressing Vyasadeva, Sri Narada Muni took leave of him, and vibrating on his Veena instrument, he left to wander at his free will. All glories and success to Srila Narada Muni, because he glorifies the activities of the personality of Godhead, and in doing so, he himself takes pleasure and also enlivens all the distressed souls of the universe. Aho devashir dhanyo yam yat kirtim shangha davanva gayam madhyamidam tantriya ramayati aturam jagat. Bhagavat Purana 1-7. Rishi Sanaka said, O Shuta, the great and transcendently powerful Vyasadeva heard everything from Sri Narada Muni. So after Narada's departure, what did Vyasadeva do? Sri Shuta said, on the western bank of the river Saraswati, which is intimately related with the Vedas, there is a cottage for meditation at Shamyaprash, which enlivens the transcendental activities of sages. In that place, Srila Vyasadeva, in his own ashram, which was surrounded by berry trees, sat down to meditate after touching water for purification. Thus he fixed his mind, perfectly engaging it by linking it in devotional service, bhakti yoga, without any tinge of materialism. And thus he saw the absolute personality of Godhead, along with his external energy, which was under full control. Due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this. And therefore, the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. Simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once and extinguishes the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. I don't usually comment, but on this I want to make one thing. Amma, the most famous Indian guru in the world right now, her name's Amma. She had her first samadhi after she walked by a recitation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam recitation was finishing just as she walked by, and you know how you feel the Shakti come in right after you finish chanting? She got that Shakti, and that was her first enlightenment. So simply by giving oral reception to this oral, A-U-R-A-L, not oral reception, but aural reception in your aura, through your ear and your aura, to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to distinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Shukadeva Goswami, who was engaged in self-realization. Sri Sanaka asked Sutta Goswami, Sri Shukadeva Goswami was already on the path of self-realization, and thus he was pleased with his own self. So why did he take the trouble to undergo the study of such a vast literature? All the different varieties of Atma Ramas, Atma means the self, Rama means pleasure, and Atma Rama is someone who is self-satisfied. All different varieties of Atma Ramas, especially those established on the path of self-realization, though freed from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotional service under the personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls. Srila Shukadeva Goswami, the son of Srila Vyasadeva, was not only transcendently powerful, he was also very dear to the devotees of the Lord. Thus he underwent the study of this great narration, the Srimad Bhagavatam. Shuta Goswami thus addressed the rishis headed by Sanaka. Now I shall begin the transcendental narration of the Lord Sri Krishna and topics of the birth, activities, and deliverance of King Parikshit, the sage amongst kings, as well as topics of the renunciation of the worldly order by the sons of Pandu. When the respective warriors of both camps, namely the Kauravas and Pandavas, were on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the dead warriors obtained their deserved destinations, and when the son of Dhritarashtra fell down lamenting, his spine broken, being beaten by the club of Bhimashen, the son of Dronacharya, beheaded the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi and delivered them as a prize to his master, foolishly thinking that he would be pleased. Duryodhan, however, disapproved of this heinous act, and he was not pleased in the least. Draupadi, the mother of the 5 children of the Pandavas, after hearing of the massacre of her sons, began to cry in distress with eyes full of tears. Trying to pacify her in her great loss, Arjun spoke to her thus. O gentle lady, when I present you with the head of that Brahmana, after beheading him with the arrows from my Gandiva bow, I shall then wipe the tears from your eyes and pacify you. Then, after burning your sons' bodies, you can take your bath standing on his head. Arjun, who is guided by the infallible Lord as a friend and driver, thus satisfied the dear lady by such statements. Then he dressed in armor and armed himself with furious weapons, and getting into his chariot, he set out to follow Ashvatthama, the son of his martial teacher. Ashvatthama, the murderer of the princes, seeing from a great distance Arjun coming at him with great speed, fled in his chariot, panic-stricken just to save his life, as Brahma fled in fear from Shiva. When the son of the Brahmanas, Ashvatthama, saw that his horses were tired, he considered that there was no alternative for protection outside of his using the ultimate weapon, the Brahmastra, which is, Prabhupada has written in quotes on the page. He has written that the Brahmastra is a nuclear weapon. And he's exactly right. If you look on the internet, you'll find all kinds of commentaries where people quote certain quotes from the Mahabharata to show that the ancient Vedic sages had this nuclear weapon called the Brahmastra, which means the weapon of God. And so, yeah. Continuing. Since his life was in danger, he touched water in sanctity and concentrated upon the chanting of hymns for throwing nuclear weapons. What other sacred text has that in there? Come on. Although he did not know how to withdraw such weapons, thereupon a glaring light spread in all directions. It was so fierce that Arjun thought his own life in danger, and he began to address Lord Sri Krishna. Arjun said, "O my Lord Sri Krishna, you are the almighty personality of Godhead. There is no limit to your different energies. Therefore, only you are competent to instill fearlessness in the hearts of your devotees. Everyone in the flames of material miseries can find the path of liberation in you only. You are the original personality of Godhead who expands himself over all the creations, all over the creations, and is transcendental to material energy. You have cast away the effects of material energy by dint of your spiritual potency. You are always situated in eternal bliss and transcendental knowledge. And yet, though you are beyond the purview of the material energy, you execute the 4 principles of liberation characterized by religion and so on for the ultimate good of the conditioned souls. Thus you descend as an incarnation to remove the burden of the world and to benefit your friends, especially those who are your exclusive devotees and are wrapped in meditation upon you. O Lord of Lords, how is it that this dangerous effulgence is spreading all around? Where does it come from? I do not understand it." The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Know from me that this is the act of the son of Drona. He has thrown the hymns of nuclear energy, Brahmastra, and he does not know how to retract the glare. He has helplessly done this, being afraid of imminent death. O Arjun, Only another Brahmashta can counteract this weapon. Since you are an expert in military science, subdue this weapon's glare with the power of your own weapon. Sri Shuta Goswami said, hearing this from the personality of Godhead, Arjuna touched water for purification, and after circumambulating Lord Krishna, he cast his Brahmashta weapon to counteract the other one. When the rays of the two Brahmashtas combined, a great circle of fire, like the disk of the sun, covered all of outer space and the whole firmament of planets. All the population of the three worlds was scorched by the combined heat of the weapons. Everyone was reminded of the Shamvartaka's fire, which takes place at the time of annihilation of the cosmos. Wow. So that's what nuclear weapons really are, huh? No wonder why apparently the aliens, the UFOs and stuff, according to popular mythology, do not approve of our using these nuclear weapons. If it's the same energy as the destruction of the universe itself, that's terrible. Continuing. Thus, seeing the disturbances of the general populace and the imminent destruction of the planets, Arjuna at once retracted both Brahmashta weapons, as Lord Sri Krishna desired. Arjuna, his eyes blazing in anger like two red balls of copper, dexterously arrested the son of Gautami and bound him with ropes like an animal. After binding Ashvatthama, Arjuna wanted to take him to the military camp. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, looking on with his lotus eyes, spoke angrily to Arjuna. Lord Sri Krishna said, "O Arjuna, you should not show mercy by releasing this relative of a Brahmana, Brahmabandhu, for he has killed innocent boys in their sleep. A person who knows the principles of religion does not kill an enemy who is careless, intoxicated, insane, asleep, afraid, or devoid of his chariot. Nor does he kill a boy, a woman, a foolish creature, or a surrendered soul. A cruel and wretched person who maintains his existence at the cost of others' lives deserves to be killed for his own well-being. Otherwise, he will go down by his own actions." So Krishna is saying here, kill him for his own good. Furthermore, I have personally heard your promise to Draupadi that you would bring forth the head of the killer of her sons. This man is an assassin and murderer of your own family members. Not only that, but he has dissatisfied his master. He is but burnt remnants of his family. Kill him immediately. Shuta Goswami said, although Krishna, who was examining Arjuna in religion, encouraged Arjuna to kill the son of Dronacharya, Arjuna, a great soul, did not like the idea of killing him, although Ashvatthama was a heinous murderer of Arjuna's family members. After reaching his own camp, Arjuna, along with his dear friend and charioteer Sri Krishna, entrusted the murderer unto his dear wife, who was lamenting for her murdered sons. Sri Shuta Goswami said, Draupadi then saw Ashvatthama, who was bound in ropes like an animal and silent for having enacted this most inglorious murder. Due to her female nature and due to her being naturally good and well-behaved, she showed him due respects as a Brahmana. She could not tolerate Ashvatthama's being bound in ropes, and being a devoted lady, she said, release him, for he is a Brahmana, our spiritual master. It was by Dronacharya's mercy that you learned the military art of throwing arrows and the confidential art of controlling weapons. He, Dronacharya, is certainly still existing, being represented by his son. His wife Kripi did not undergo a sati with him because she had a son. O most fortunate who knows the principles of religion, it is not good for you to cause grief to glorious family members who are always respectful and worshipful. My lord, do not make the wife of Dronacharya cry like me. I am aggrieved for the death of my sons. She need not constantly cry like me. If the kingly administrative order, being unrestricted in sense control, offends the Brahmana order and enrages them, then the fire of that rage burns up the whole body of royal family and brings grief upon all. Shuddha Goswami said, "O Brahmanas, King Yudhishthir fully supported the statements of the queen, which were in accordance with the principles of religion and were justified, glorious, full of mercy and equity, and without duplicity. Nakul and Sahadev, the son of the brothers of the king, the two younger Pandavas, also Satyaki, Arjun, the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, son of Devaki, and the ladies of others, all unanimously agreed with the king. Bhim, however, disagreed with them and recommended killing this culprit, who, in an angry mood, had murdered sleeping children for no purpose and for neither his nor his master's interest. Chaturbuj, the four-armed one, or the personality of Godhead, after hearing the words of Bhim, Draupadi, and others, saw the face of his dear friend Arjun, and he began to speak as if smiling. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, said, "A friend of a Brahmana is not to be killed, but if he is an aggressor, he must be killed. All these rulings are in the scriptures, and you should act accordingly. You have to fulfill your promise to your wife, and you must also act to the satisfaction of Bhimasen and me." Just as Arjun could understand the motive of the Lord by his equivocal orders, and thus just then Arjun could understand the motive of the Lord by his equivocal orders. And thus, with his sword, he severed both the hair and the jewel from the head of Ashvatthama. Ashvatthama, had already lost his bodily luster due to infanticide, and now, moreover, having lost the jewel from his head, he lost even more strength. Thus he was unbound and driven out of the camp. Cutting the hair from his head, depriving him of his wealth, and driving him from his residence are prescribed punishments for the relative of a Brahmana. There is no injunction for killing the body. Thereafter, the sons of Pandu and Draupadi, overwhelmed with grief, performed the proper rituals for the dead bodies of their relatives. Well, that was kind of a sad story, but it kind of illustrates the reasoning behind the principles of religion. And ultimately, at the core, it comes down to the relationship with the Bhagavan. It comes down to an intimate relationship with him that the principles of religion are all founded upon. What he says goes. Shuddha Goswami said, "Thereafter the Pandavas, desiring to deliver water to the dead relatives who had desired it, went to the Ganges with Draupadi. The ladies walked in front. Having lamented over them and sufficiently offered Ganges water, they bathed in the Ganges, whose water is sanctified due to being mixed with the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord. There sat the king of the Kurus, Maharaj Yudhishthir, along with his younger brother and Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, Kunti, and Draupadi, all overwhelmed with grief. Lord Krishna was also there. Citing the stringent laws of the Almighty and their reactions upon living beings, Lord Sri Krishna and the Munis began to pacify those who were shocked and affected. The clever Duryodhana and his party cunningly usurped the kingdom of Yudhishthir, who had no enemy. By the grace of their Lord, the recovery was executed, and the unscrupulous kings who joined with Duryodhana were killed by him. Others also died, their duration of life having decreased from their rough handling of the hair of Queen Draupadi. Lord Sri Krishna caused 3 well-performed Ashvamedha yajnas, horse sacrifices, to be conducted by Maharaj Yudhishthir, and thus caused his virtuous fame to be glorified in all directions, like that of Indra, who had performed 100 such sacrifices. Lord Sri Krishna then prepared for his departure. He invited the sons of Pandu, after having been worshipped by the Brahmanas headed by Srila Vyasadeva. The Lord also reciprocated greetings. As soon as he seated himself on the chariot to start for Dwarka, he saw Uttara hurrying toward him in fear. Uttara said, "O Lord of Lords, Lord of the universe, you are the greatest of mystics. Please protect me, for there is no one else who can save me from the clutches of death in this world of duality. O my Lord, you are all-powerful. A fiery arrow is coming towards me fast, my Lord. Let it burn me personally, if you so desire. but do not let it burn and abort my embryo. Please do me this favor, my lord. Shuta Goswami said, having patiently heard her words, Lord Sri Krishna, who is always very affectionate to his devotees, could at once understand that Ashvatthama, the son of Dronacharya, had thrown the Brahmashtra, the nuclear weapon, to finish the last life in the Pandava family. So Krishna had realized that Ashvatthama had thrown this nuclear weapon into the womb of Draupadi, I believe it was. O foremost among great thinkers, Munis, Shanaka, seeing the glaring Brahmashtra proceeding towards them, the Pandavas took up their 5 respective weapons. The Almighty Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, having observed that a great danger was befalling his unalloyed devotees, who were fully surrendered souls, at once took up his Sudarshan disc to protect them. The Lord of Supreme Mysticism, Sri Krishna, resides within everyone's heart as the Paramatma. As such, just to protect the progeny of the Kuru dynasty, he covered the embryo of Uttara by his personal energy. Sanaka, although the supreme Brahmashtra weapon released by Ashvatthama was irresistible and without check or counteraction, it was neutralized and foiled when confronted by the strength of Vishnu, Lord Sri Krishna. O Brahmanas, do not think this to be especially wonderful in the activities of the mysterious and infallible personality of Godhead. By his own transcendental energy, he maintains and annihilates all material things, although he himself is unborn. Thus saved from the radiation of the Brahmashtra, Kunti owes Kunti, the chaste devotee of the Lord, and her 5 sons, and Draupadi, or actually I think it was Draupadi, addressed Lord Krishna as he started for home. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Draupadi who had given birth, and it was Arjuna's son's baby. I forgot his name right now, but Arjuna's son is the one who had given birth to the baby, and he had died on the battlefield, and all of the Pandavas' sons had been killed by Ashvatthama. So here's the last Pandava heir, who became, I forget who he becomes, Maharaj Parikshit, I think, maybe, or his son, the grandson of this baby, or the son of this baby becomes Maharaj Parikshit, I think. Continuing. Being beyond the range of limited sense perception, you are eternally irreproachable. You are the eternally irreproachable factor covered by the curtain of deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. You yourself descend to propagate the transcendental science of devotional service unto the hearts of the advanced transcendentalists and mental speculators, who are purified by being able to discriminate between matter and spirit. How then can we women know you perfectly? Let me therefore offer respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who has become son of Vasudeva, the pleasure of Devaki, the boy of Nanda, and the other cowherd men of Vrindavan, and the enlivener of the cows and the senses. In Sanskrit, the word go, as in Gopal, protector of the cows, also means senses. The word go can also mean senses, like the term Goswami. When you hear talk about someone who's a very famous Vaishnav master, they take the title of Goswami, which means master of the senses. It indicates that one's senses are protected. Gopala, Krishna, protector of the senses. The enlivener of the cows and the senses. My respectful obeisances are unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with a depression like the lotus flower, who are always decorated with the garlands of lotus flowers, whose glance is as cool as the lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. O Hrishikesh, master of the senses and the Lord of lords, you have released your mother Devaki, who was too long imprisoned and distressed by the envious King Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers. Oh, my dear Krishna, your lordship has protected us from a poisoned cake, from a great fire, from cannibals, from the vicious assembly, from sufferings during our exile in the forest, and from the battle where the great generals fought. and now you have saved us from the weapons of Ashvatthama. I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again, so that we could see you again and again, for seeing you means that we no longer see repeated births and deaths. My Lord, your lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feelings. My obeisances are unto you, who are the property of the materially impoverished. You have nothing to do with the actions and reactions of the material modes of nature. You are self-satisfied, and therefore you are the most gentle and master of the monists, and are the master of monists. My Lord, I consider your lordship to be eternal time, the supreme controller, without beginning and end, the all-pervasive one. In distributing your mercy, you are equal to everyone. The dissensions between living beings are due to social intercourse. O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and are so misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial. Of course it is bewildering, O soul of the universe, that you work, although you are inactive, and that you take birth, though you are the vital force and the unborn. You yourself descend among animals, sages, and aquatics. Verily, this is bewildering. My dear Krishna, Jashoda took a rope to bind you when you committed an offense, and your perturbed eyes overflooded with tears, which washed the mascara from your eyes, and you were afraid, though fear personified is afraid of you. This sight is bewildering to me. Some say that the unborn is born for the glorification of pious kings, and others say that he is born to please King Yadu, one of your dearest devotees. You appear in his families as sandalwood appears in the Malaya hills. Others say that since both Vasudeva and Devaki prayed for you, you have taken your birth as their son. Undoubtedly you are unborn, yet you take your birth for the welfare and kill those for their welfare and kill those who are envious of the demigods. Others say that the world, being overburdened like a boat at sea, is much aggrieved, and that Brahma, who is your son, prayed for you, and so you have appeared to diminish the trouble. And yet others say that you have appeared to rejuvenate the devotional service of hearing, remembering, worshipping, and so on, in order that the conditioned souls suffering from material pangs might take advantage and gain liberation. O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today, that we are completely dependent on your mercy, and have no one else to protect us, now when all kings are at enmity with us? As the name and fame of a particular body is finished with the disappearance of the living spirit, similarly, if you do not look upon us, all of our fame activities, along with the Pandavas and Jadus, will end at once. O Gadadhar, Krishna, our kingdom is now being marked by the impressions of your feet, and therefore it appears beautiful. But when you leave, it will no longer be so. All these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance, the trees are full of fruits, the rivers are flowing, the hills are full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. All this is due to your glancing over them. O Lord of the universe, soul of the universe, O personality in the form of the universe, please therefore sever my tie of affection for my kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn to you without being diverted to anyone else. O Krishna, O friend of Arjun, O chief among the descendants of Vrishni, you are the destroyer of those political parties which are the disturbing elements on this earth. Your prowess never deteriorates. You are the proprietor of the transcendental abode. and you descend to relieve the distresses of the cows, the brahmanas, and the devotees. You, Almighty God, you are the Almighty God, and I offer to you my respectful obeisances. Shuta Goswami said, the Lord, thus hearing the prayers of Kunti Deva, composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. The smile was enchanting as his mystic power. Thus accepting the prayers of Srimati Kunti Devi, the Lord subsequently informed other ladies of his departure by entering the palace of Hastinapur. But upon preparing to leave, he was stopped by King Yudhishthir, who implored him lovingly. King Yudhishthir, who was very much aggrieved, could not be convinced, despite instructions by the great sages headed by Vyasa and by Lord Krishna himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. King Yudhishthir, son of Dharma, overwhelmed by the death of his friends, was aggrieved just like a common materialistic man. O sages, thus deluded by affection, he began to speak. King Yudhishthir said, O my Lord, I am the most sinful man. Just see my heart, which is full of ignorance. This body, which is ultimately meant for others, has killed many, many phalanxes of men. I have killed many boys, brahmanas, well-wishers, friends, parents, preceptors, and brothers. Though I live millions of years, I will not be relieved from the hell that awaits me for all these sins. There is no sin for a king who kills for the right cause, who is engaged in maintaining his citizens, but this injunction is not applicable to me. I have killed many friends of women, and I have thus caused enmity to such an extent that it is not possible to undo it by material welfare work. As it is not possible to flitter muddy water through mud, or purify a wine-stained pot with wine, it is not possible to counteract the killing of many men by sacrificing animals. Shuta Goswami said, being afraid for having killed so many subjects on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Maharaj Yudhishthir went to the scene of the massacre. There Bhishma Dev was lying on a bed of arrows, about to pass away. At that time, all his brothers followed him on beautiful chariots drawn by first-class horses decorated with gold ornaments. Among them were Vyas and rishis like Dhamya, the learned priest of the Pandavas, and others. O sage among the Brahmanas, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, also followed, seated on a chariot with Arjun. Thus King Yudhishthir appeared very aristocratic, like Kuver surrounded by his companions, the Guyakas. Kuber is the god of wealth. Seeing him, Bhishma, lying on the ground, like a demigod fallen from the sky, the Pandava king Yudhishthir, along with his younger brothers and Lord Krishna, bowed down before him. Just to see the chief of the descendants of King Bharat, Bhishma, and all the great souls in the universe, namely the rishis amongst demigods, brahmans, and kings, all situated in the quality of goodness, were assembled there. All the sages like Parvata Muni, Narada, Dhamya, Vyas, the incarnation of God, Brihadashva, Bharadbhaja, Parashuram, and his disciples Vashisht, Indrapramad, Trita, Grichshamad, Ashita, Kakshivan, Gautam, Atri, Kaushika, and Sudarshan were also present. And many others like Shukadev Goswami and other purified souls, Kashyap and Angirasha were there, and others, all accompanied by the respective disciples, arrived there. Bhishma Dev, who is the best among the 8 Vashus, received and welcomed all the great and powerful rishis who were assembled there, for he knew perfectly all the religious principles according to time and place. Lord Sri Krishna is situated in everyone's heart, yet he manifests his transcendental form by his internal potency. This very Lord was sitting before Bhishmadev, and since Bhishmadev knew of his glories, he worshipped him duly. The son of Maharaj Pandu were sitting silently nearby, overtaken with affection for their dying grandfather. Seeing this, Bhishmadev congratulated them with feeling. There were tears of ecstasy in his eyes, for he was overwhelmed by love and affection. Bhishmadev said, "Oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustices you good souls suffer for being the sons of religion personified. You did not deserve to remain alive under those tribulations, yet you were protected by the Brahmanas, God, and religion. As far as my daughter-in-law Kunti is concerned, upon the great General Pandu's death, she became a widow with many children, and therefore she suffered greatly. And when you were grown up, she suffered a great deal because of your actions. In my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time, under whose control everyone in the planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the wind. Oh, how wonderful is the influence of inevitable time! It is irreversible. Otherwise, how can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhishthir, the son of the demigod controlling religion? Bhim, the great fighter with a club, the great bowman Arjun with his mighty weapon Gandiva, and above all the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas. O King, know that no one can know the plan of the Lord. O King, no one can know the plan of the Lord. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. O best among the descendants of Bharat, Yudhishthir, I maintain, therefore, that all this is within the plan of the Lord. Accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now appointed administrative head, and my lord, you should now take care of these subjects who are now rendered helpless. This Sri Krishna is no other than the inconceivable original personality of Godhead. He is the first Narayan, the supreme enjoyer. But he is moving among the descendants of King Vrishni, just like one of us, and he is bewildering us with his self-created energy. O King, Lord Shiva, Narad, the sage among the demigods, and Kapila, the incarnation of Godhead, all know very confidently about his glories through direct contact. O King, that personality whom, out of ignorance, you thought to be your maternal cousin, your very dear friend, well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc., is that very personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Being the absolute personality of Godhead, he is present in everyone's heart, he is equally kind to everyone, and he is free from false ego of differentiation. Therefore, whatever he does is free from material inebriety. He is equibalanced. Yet despite being equally kind to everyone, he has graciously come before me while I am ending my life, for I am his unflinching servitor. The personality of Godhead who appears in the mind of the devotee by attentive devotion and meditation and by chanting the holy name, releases the devotee from the bondage of fruitive activities at the time of his quitting the body. May my Lord, who is four-handed and whose beautifully decorated lotus face, with eyes as red as the rising sun, is smiling, kindly await me at the moment when I quit this material body. Shuta Goswami said, Maharaj Yudhishthir, after hearing Bhishmadev speak in that appealing tone, asked him, in the presence of all great rishis, about the essential principles of various religious duties. At Maharaj Yudhishthir's enquiry, Bhishma Dev first defined all of the classifications of caste and orders of life in terms of the individual's qualifications. Then he systematically, in twofold divisions, described the counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. He then explained, by divisions, acts of charity, the pragmatic activities of a king, and activities for salvation. Then he described the duties of women and devotees, both briefly and extensively. Then he described the occupational duties of different orders of statuses of life, citing instances from history, for he was himself well acquainted with the truth. While Bhishma Dev was describing occupational duties, the sun's course ran into the northern hemisphere. This period is desired by mystics who die at their will. Thereupon that man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings, and who fought on thousands of battlefields and protect thousands of men, stopped speaking, and being completely freed from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything and fixed his wide-open eyes upon the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, who stood before him, four-handed, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shined. By pure meditation, looking at Lord Sri Krishna, he was at once freed from all material inauspiciousness, and was relieved of all bodily pains caused by the arrow wounds. Thus all the external activities of his senses at once stopped, and he prayed transcendently to the controller of all living beings while quitting his material body. Bhishma Dev said, "Let me now invest my thinking, feeling, and willing, which were so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties, in the all-powerful Lord Sri Krishna. He is always self-satisfied, but sometimes, being the leader of the devotees, he enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending in the material world, although from him only the material world is created." Isn't that sad, folks? Isn't it so sad that we can't have a world where people are allowed to pass from this world to the next one in a comfortable setting where they reaffirm their faith in God, where they go out surrounded by love like Bhishma Dev did? If I was there at the battlefield at Mahabharata, if I was in the posse of the Pandavas or the Kurus, when I saw Bhishma Dev talking to Krishna like this, ecstatic and full of love, I would be so happy for him. Do you think that I would be mourning this person's death? It would be ecstatic joy for this person's, ascension. And that's what we really should be doing as a society. Continuing. Shri Krishna is the intimate friend of Arjuna. He has appeared on this earth in his transcendental body, which resembles the bluish color of the tamal tree. His body attracts everyone in the 3 planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. May his glittering yellow dress and his lotus face, covered with paintings of sandalwood pulp, be the object of my attraction, and may I desire not fruitive results. On the battlefield where Sri Krishna attended Arjuna out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hoofs of the horses, and because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All these decorations, intensified by the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go unto Sri Krishna. In obedience to the command of his friend, Lord Sri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana, and while there he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. You could probably derive about a zillion meanings out of that one sentence. Translate it to what's happening inside your own heart, translate it to what's happening in the world, translate it to the polemic struggle between dark and light, translate it to the arousing of primordial consciousness, translate it to astrology. There's so many symbolisms within this lila of the Lord instructing Arjun before the Bhagavad Gita, or in the Bhagavad Gita before the battle of Kurukshetra. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. Fulfilling my desire and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly. Just as a lion goes to kill an elephant, he even dropped his outer garment on the way. May he, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead who awards salvation, be my ultimate destination. On the battlefield he charged me, as if angry because of the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows. His shield was scattered, and his body was smeared with blood due to the wounds. At the moment of death, let my ultimate attraction be to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. I concentrate my mind upon the chariot driver of Arjun, who stood with a whip in his right hand and a bridle rope in his left, and was very careful to give protection to Arjun's chariot by all means. Those who saw him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original forms after death. The original form means a Svarupa. In Vaishnava philosophy, it's understood that enlightenment is tantamount to attainment of the Svarup, which is seen to be your original spiritual form, Svarupa. Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Sri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Rajadham, the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the Rasa dance. At the Rajasuya Yajna sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhishthir, there was the great assembly of all the elite men of the world, the royal and learned orders, and in that great assembly Lord Sri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of Godhead. This happened during my presence, and I remembered the incident in order to keep my mind upon the Lord. How amazing. How amazing. It's saying here that at the sacrifice which Yudhishthir performed in order to become the emperor of the world, the Rajasuya Yajna was a sacrifice that he performed in order to become the emperor of the world. And not in an evil way at all. He was actually trying to reconciliate all of the errant states which had been separated after Kali Yuga is coming, and which were being torn apart. He wanted to unite them under religion, unite them under dharma. So it says here that there were all the elite men of the entire world, not of India. Of course, back then they called the world Bharata, and nowadays Bharata means India, although originally Bharata referred to the whole planet, Bharata Varsh. Everyone in the whole world was worshipping Krishna as the personality of Godhead. Every single person in the world, not the Indians, but the Jews, the Arabs, the Africans, the Slavs, the Chinese, Southeast Asians, other Europeans. Everybody was there with their entourages worshipping Krishna. And if you study someone like Bhaktivedanta Swami, you'll see that it's possible that that these people knew much more than we give them credit for in the modern world, and that all of these kind of religious and mystical systems come out of the same general origin. Continuing. At the Rajasuya Yagna sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhishthir, there was the greatest assembly of all the elite men in the world, of royal and learned orders, and in that great assembly, Lord Sri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of Godhead. This happened during my presence, and I remembered the incident in order to keep my mind upon the Lord. Now I can meditate with full concentration upon that one Lord, Sri Krishna, now present before me, because I have transcended the misconceptions of duality in regards to his presence in everyone's heart, even the hearts of mental speculators. He is in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one. Shuta Goswami said, thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Supersoul, Lord Sri Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions. Herein lies a great secret and the key to all yoga. This is the essence of yoga, this Srimad Bhagavatam 1-9-43. Merging yourself into the Lord, the Paramatma, the Super Soul, with mind, buddhi, with speech, sight, and actions. So above, they talk about that the personality of Godhead appears in the mind of the devotee by a tentative devotion and meditation and by the chanting of the holy name. And then we have here that Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Super Soul by the use of his mind, speech, sight, and actions. And so if all of you want to merge yourself into the Supreme Soul, the Paramatma, we need to take our mind and focus it on something other than our body and our direct individual ego. All the great transcendentalists, any great transcendentalist you've ever heard of or seen, is only that by the dint of their concentration on the Supersoul. You'll never find a transcendentalist of any type, it doesn't matter what religion, Christian, Islam, Buddha, any transcendentalist is someone that has their mind, speech, sight, and actions merged within the Supreme Soul. So you have to look within yourself and see the Super Soul. Look within yourself and see the Super Soul, because he's nowhere else except there. It says in one Veda that the whole universe is his heart. The whole universe is his heart. But for some reason, when we focus entirely on our own body, we use our mind to think about, oh, what am I gonna do today? Oh, is this person saying this thing about me? Am I this and this and that? Me. We use our speech to talk a bunch of nonsense that has no relevance to the Supreme Absolute. We use our sight to look at pointless movies and other crap which doesn't serve us in any way except to, mildly entertain us. It draws us back into the material world and into our conditioned state when we constantly watch movies and things like that, TV. And our actions. Our actions just based on the needs of our senses. Are we saying, oh, I need to go out and get drunk tonight? Oh, I need to go out and get laid tonight? Oh, I feel like doing this or that thing which I know is terrible for me, which is evil. We have to work to try to bring our actions, our sight, our speech, and our mind away from our own individual stories and problems. Instead, use these faculties to bring into your mind the Supreme, to absorb yourself into the Supreme. The word that they used here in 1-9-43 was merge. Let's see, what's the actual Sanskrit word? Avesya, having merged in. So the term that I use often is laya, L-A-Y-A, which means absorption. By these processes of yoga, one is made to be absorbed. Yoga is not for health and stretching and physical fitness and for feeling good and for attracting a mate and etc., etc., etc. Yoga is simply to enable you to experience the Supreme Self. And to experience yourself partaking of the nature of the Supreme Self. You can't experience yourself completely as the Supreme Self, but you can experience yourself completely supreme in His nature, 100%, and 0% of your own human nature. You can be 100% absorbed in Him. In Sufism, this is called Makam Fana, which means the station of total destruction. Fana comes from the same root as nirvana, which means complete destruction. What's the actual? Let me look this up on Google. Nirvana. I know there's a specific phrase that they use, which is really good. Literally means blowing out. Nirvana literally means blowing out. So this means that my conception of my lower self, when you're born into this material world and you don't know better, you don't have a spiritual background, you don't know what's going on, you don't know who you are, etc., you form an identity out of what you can perceive just directly around you in the material world. You might have some, with myself, I always kind of felt that I could think in a more non-linear way than the kids around me as a kid. My mind was just a little bit more spherical than like linear, and yet still all of my associations of identity were taken and drawn from this world. So even though there's this hidden part of myself in that case, which is transcendental to this material world, I become absorbed into my body. I become absorbed into my senses. And there's an actual energetic process happening in the chakras which causes my energy to become entangled in these knots of like astral crap. And my consciousness and my energy become entangled in this, depleted, my life force is drained out, and eventually I have to quit this body because there's no more life force left. I've drained it all into the sense faculties. That's the function of the animal soul, what they call in Kabbalah the nefesh, the animal soul, or the what Jung called the anima. It seeks out death. It seeks out suicide. It seeks out everything bad. So the more that our mind and consciousness is in ignorance of who we truly are, and in ignorance of what God is, the more that we become a plaything to the God of this world, the demiurge. And we partake of the nature of the demiurge. That is no light, darkness, density, matter, coldness, confusion, loneliness, pain, isolation, sorrow, etc. I'm sure you're well familiar with all these terms on this planet. All of these things are associated with being in bodily consciousness. Constantly thinking, I am this body. False ego, the word false ego, or ahamkara, literally means that you think that you are this body. Ahamkara, the word for false ego, means that when you mistake yourself with the body that you're sitting in. How many of us, I mean even myself included, it requires, like Srimad Bhagavatam says, it requires yourself to worship, merge yourself in the Supreme with mind, speech, sight, and actions. When you merge yourself in the Supreme with mind, speech, sight, and actions, no longer I'm thinking, oh, my little body, oh, the country, oh, the problems, oh my God, the other people, and I'm in this material world, and I'm this material body, and I'm not a soul, and I'm mortal, and etc., etc., etc. All of that, it's like that is like dusty clouds in the sky, right? All of these misconceptions called avidya, or ignorance, or nescience, are like dusty clouds in the sky of your mind. And they become dust, literal dust on the astral body, etc., which is like a poison which depletes your life force, drawing it out of you until you die and you're forced to take another body. When you focus your mind, intelligence, speech, sight, and actions on the Supreme, the more that you're able to merge yourself in the Supreme, the more that the sun burns through these clouds, and you are completely effaced. That's what nirvana means, blown out. It means that there's no more material attachment. There's no more ahamkara. The Sufis say that instead that you are filled with the attributes and qualities of the Lord, period. Dressed in His qualities and attributes, they say. I love how they combine the Western and Eastern, like nirvana, fana. And actually the term that they use, fana, means forest. So it implies the Garden of Paradise. Very beautiful. Continuing. 1-9-44. Knowing that Bhishmadev had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute, all present there became silent like birds at the end of day. See, Bhishmadev had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute. Now, this is a Vaishnava text. That doesn't sound very dualistic to me. That sounds more like monist. And actually, there's a story that we read a couple days ago, 1.7, I think it was, or 1.6. There's a story where Sri Shukadev Goswami is going by a pool or like a pond, and he sees these naked women, and the naked women don't even bat an eye. They're like, oh hey, playing with him and splashing water, etc. And then Srila Vyasadeva goes by, and all the naked women freak out, and they put all their clothes on, and like, oh my God, what are you doing? And Vyasadeva says, well, why did you all of a sudden freak out in front of me? And you were fine with Shukadev Goswami. And they said, well, Shukadev Goswami is a monist, meaning he focuses on non-duality of himself and the Absolute. So with him, there's no distinction of male, female, old, young, just the Absolute. And so actually the Srimad Bhagavatam is affirming that this position is higher than dualism in some senses, and yet dualism still exists in a oneness kind of way, in a separate but different achintya beta way. But essentially, as it says here, Bhishmadev merged himself in the super soul. Merged himself in the super soul. merged himself in the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute. Merged himself. So I would like to see the dualists among the Vaishnavas explain that. How did he merge himself? He lost himself. He entered nirvana. He was blown out of this material, and he became merged in the Absolute. So Vaishnavas and dualists who are really hard on the quote-unquote Mayavadis and whatnot, your own text supports fringe Mayavad, you know, very close to what the Mayavadis say. And it's a certain philosophical position which is greatly liberating, which is absolutely necessary. You need to be extreme enough to say, okay, all that is really the Absolute. My own self is a part of that. My own self is that. 1-9-44. Knowing that Bhishmadev had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute, all present there became silent like birds at the end of day. Thereafter both men and demigods sounded drums in honor, and the honest royal order commenced demonstrations of honor and respect, and from the sky fell showers of flowers. That's beautiful. The Pure Land Sutra of Buddhism describes that in the Pure Land, constantly flowers are falling from the sky. O descendant of Bhrigu, Shanaka, after performing funeral rites for the dead body of Bhishmadev, Maharaj Yudhishthir was momentarily overtaken with grief. All the sages then glorified Lord Sri Krishna, who was present there, by confidential Vedic hymns. Then all of them returned to their respective hermitage, bearing always Lord Krishna within their hearts. Thereafter, Maharaj Yudhishthir at once went to his capital, Hastinapura, accompanied by Lord Sri Krishna, and there consoled his uncle and aunt Gandhari, who was an ascetic. After this, the great religious king, Maharaj Yudhishthir, executed the royal power in the kingdom strictly according to the codes and royal principles approved by his uncle and confirmed by Lord Sri. We never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by hymns and prayers. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationships with him relish hearing of his pastimes at every moment. Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, along with Balaram, played like a human being, and so masked, he performed many superhuman acts. Knowing well the age of Kali has already begun, we are assembled here in this holy place to hear at great length the transcendental message of the Godhead, and in this way perform sacrifice. We think that we have met your goodness by the will of providence, just so that we might accept you as the captain of the ship for those who desire to cross the difficult ocean of Kali, which deteriorates all of the good qualities of a human being. Since Sri Krishna, the absolute truth, the master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode, please tell us to whom the religious principles have now gone for shelter. So I'm going to begin reciting chapter 1.2.1 from the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 1-2, Divinity and Divine Service. Ugrashrava Shuta Goswami, the son of Romaharshana, being fully satisfied with the perfect questions of the Brahmanas, thanked them and thus attempted to reply. Srila Shuta Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that great sage, Shukadeva Goswami, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyas, leaving home without undergoing reformation by a sacred thread or ceremonies observed by the higher castes, his father, Vyasadev, fearing separation from him, cried out, 'O my son, indeed, Only the trees, which were absorbed in the same feeling of separation, echoed in response of the bereaved father, when he cried out, "Oh, my son." Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Shuka, the spiritual master of all sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge, after having personally assimilated it by experience. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto his mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. O sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and so are of the relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant to inquire about the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatman, or Bhagwan. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from Vedanta Shruti. O best among twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging duties It is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste division and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead. Therefore, with one-pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. With sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma, by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the message of Vasudeva. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, supersoul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted.
Shakti Seer 2.
Thank you for choosing to take an interest in this sacred text, the Srimad Bhagavatam, also called the Bhagavata Purana, which has served as the Bible for hundreds of millions of Hindus presently and throughout history, since it was written several thousands of years ago. And according to certain researchers, also for people across the world as far away as the Mediterranean. The Bhagavata Purana was penned by Srila Vyasadeva, the avatar of Vishnu, after he had written all of the previous Vedas. He wrote all of the previous Vedas, and he was not happy and fulfilled in his heart with what he had written and given to mankind, because he had not expressed the most exquisite nectar of devotion to God and the unspeakable reality of that Bhagawan, that personality of Godhead, as Prabhupada calls it. We in the West did not have access to this scripture up until very recently. The scripture was translated by Srila Prabhupada and brought here and propagated in many universities and private collections alike. What we can take from the scripture is precisely that, whatever we can take from it. Whatever level of hearing that you're able to hear with will affect the level that your consciousness is impacted by this sacred oral reception, as it's called, A-U-R-A-L, oral reception, through the spoken word of the sacred scriptures of the Puranas, especially this Purana. In Pure Land Buddhism, as well as in Vaishnavism, the sacred hearing through oral reception, A-U-R-A-L, is part of not only devotion, but part of the fundamental reality of the self. And so, as we begin, hear deeply with your heart, not just with your material intellect. See deeply with your heart, not just with your material eyes. Think deeply with your whole being, from the core of your soul, from the heart to the 1,000-petaled lotus atop your head. Let this gnosis vibrate true within your being. Om Tat Sat. Okay, so Srimad Bhagavatam, the great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters. The sages said, "Respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in the scriptures famous for religious life, and in the Puranas and histories as well. For you have gone through them under proper guidance and also explained them. Being the eldest learned Vedantist, O Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead. And you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge. And because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from them. Please, therefore, being blessed with many years, explain to us, in an easily understandable way, what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. There are many varieties of scriptures, and in all of them are many prescribed duties, which can be learned only after many years of study in their various divisions. Therefore, O sage, please select the essence of all these scriptures and explain it for the good of all living beings, that by such instructions their hearts may be fully satisfied. All blessings upon you, O Sutta Goswami. You know for what purpose the personality of Godhead appeared in the womb of Devaki as the son of Vasudeva. O Sutta Goswami, We are eager to learn about the personality of Godhead and His incarnations. Please explain to us those teachings imparted by previous masters, acharyas, for one is uplifted both by speaking them and by hearing them. Living beings who are entangled in the complicated mashes of birth and death can be freed immediately, even by unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by feared personified. O Sutta, those great sages who have completely taken shelter in the lotus feet of the Lord can at once sanctify those who come into touch with them, whereas the waters of the Ganga can only sanctify after prolonged use. Who is there desiring deliverance from the vices of the age of quarrel, who is not willing to hear the virtuous glories of the Lord? Who is there desiring deliverance from the vices of the age of quarrel, who is not willing to hear of the virtuous glories of the Lord? His transcendental acts are magnificent and gracious, and great learned sages like Narada sing of them. Please therefore speak to us, who are eager to hear about the adventures he performs in his various incarnations. O wise Sutta, please narrate to us the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Godhead's multi-incarnations. Such auspicious adventures and pastimes of the Lord, the Supreme Controller, are performed by his internal powers. 1-1-1 O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Krishna, because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no cause beyond him. It is he who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire, or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is externally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is in reality The highest truth is reality, distinguished from illusion, for the welfare of all. The highest truth is reality, distinguished from illusion, for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of the Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Once in the holy forests of Naimashanya, great sages headed by the sage Shaunaka assembled to perform a great 1,000-year sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees. One day, after finishing their morning duties by burning a sacrificial fire and offering a seat of esteem to Srila Shuta Goswami, the great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters.